All right, welcome to a GouldFish Pod special edition. It's another Big Davecast here to talk about just plenty of wrestling from all around the world, besides just AEW, which is the usual course. Dave Gould, my father, welcome aboard. How are you?
Thank you. I'm great. Looking forward to a 1 hour special edition.
Yeah, hopefully.
We'll see what we can get, but a
I
lot of wrestling from around the world that I will lend my opinion and expertise on here.
I will say that I did yesterday's, or well, it came out today, depending on when you're hearing this, but the latest episode took me a long while to get going. So let's start.
Okay.
Let's start right away. We've got Cody Rhodes. He's gone from AEW. This is week-old news by now. He's probably going to debut on Raw while we're doing this.
He very well could. Yes,
it's possible.
My thoughts on Cody. It's like I felt like I was going through a 12-step program when I first heard the news last week. It's one of those where it's like denial, like, oh no, it can't be. And like you work through all the scenarios and I listened to you guys talk about it. And it's like, oh, okay, this is just a work. Well, no, maybe it's not even real. No, he's going to WWE. No, he's going to Hollywood. No, at this point, I don't even really care where he shows up. I came to that realization that like Cody as a performer in AEW, I mean, he was great. He had some of their best matches. And really his last match where I thought he put over Sammy real strong, Sammy Guevara in the ladder match. You'll never take that away, but I mean, what a Cody-less AEW to me is just fine. They got so much talent. I don't think they miss him. And I can't wait for the Twitter and social media pundits as he cuts his first promo in a WWE ring to be pulling all of his old tweets, interviews, and everything else. And it'll be open day. It'll be open field to criticize Cody for everything that he once said that is no longer true. And in the middle of a WWE ring. So to Cody, best wishes to you in your future endeavors.
And I will say, I suppose Cody put him over real strong, with the exception of the fact that Fuego del Sol had to stop him in order. So,
Fuego, I've eliminated. I actually in the post-match edit, I've eliminated Fuego from my memory. So
no, that sticks with me forever. Couldn't have just let the guy come back and climb the ladder. But whatever.
Yeah. So but yeah, I mean, he'll do what he's gonna do, and the wrestling world will be none the different the next day. I don't think so.
He wasn't around enough for me to be sitting here clamoring for him. Now that he would show up and do something every once in a while, and that's something that he did, ranged from what is going on to good, really good.
Yeah.
So I mean,
and really, I mean, when you look at my last thought, when you look at his departure from WWE, it was really all about Cody, right? It was building his brand. It was running on the world tour. It was the promotion in ROH. It was joining Bullet Club. It was wrestling in New Japan. It was coming to AEW. And is Cody Rhodes the brand bigger than it was when he left WWE? 100%. So now go back to that big stage. And I think when Fish was touching on some of the Hollywood stuff, I think this is a platform that he sees guys like Batista, John Cena, obviously The Rock, that have all kind of, I mean, even Sasha Banks into the Disney series, with Little Yoda. Why am I drawing a blank on the Mandalorian? She had a bit role, but it was prominent enough that people knew she was on. I think that's just a launching pad for him. We may see him in WWE for 2 years. And then I honestly believe, he'll be Hollywood bound. He's got a good look and personality, and he's on TV already. So I think that's ultimately where a Cody Rhodes is going to end up, in Hollywood.
I've got one final thing, and it's a bit of a funny thing, at least something that I find funny. the the Cody Rhodes character, like I'm a big proponent of taking yourself seriously. And I think that borderline heel babyface Cody, the whole point was he was taking himself way too seriously. And because of that, a lot of his promos to me missed because they were just so overly dramatic and drawn out that it's just like, dude, get to the point. But in that vein, I've been reading tweets today, and these tweets are Cody photoshopped with the SmackDown logo and the Fox and the thing. And it's basically people writing up their own version of Cody's first promo. And I'm going to read one.
All right.
I can literally hear him when I read these. And it's like, it's such a shame that these random faceless Twitter profiles have this so spot on.
Everyone in the Cody verse, close your eyes and picture Cody.
SmackDown. All right. I didn't abandon the revolution. I brought the revolution back home. I brought the revolution to SmackDown. You see, the best way to change pro wrestling is to do it from within. I'm here to win the WWE Championship for my fans, for my daughter, for my dad.
And you know what would be the best, and for the boys, you know who you are.
That would get cut out of the script.
Yeah. Vince would want to know who the boys were. So,
well, like that's so along the lines of Cody.
It's 100%.
It might as well be a direct quote.
Yeah, and if he can get that past the 7 writing teams and the agents and Vince, that would be. You know, you're right. That's completely Cody Rhodes right there.
So all right. Next is something that I wasn't able to get into my viewing schedule. Usually this is something I watch when I don't mind being confused for a couple of hours, but you watch the AAA Rey de Reyes show?
Yeah, I watched the AAA. This is actually the 3rd consecutive AAA show that I've watched. And I don't know, it's kind of the car crash that like every time it's like when I watch the GCW shows, it's like I know it's like my expectation level is so low that I'm like, okay, well maybe it'll be great. The difference between the GCW shows and the AAA shows is, you know, there's always going to be one match that you're going to be like, oh, that was great. And there was, and in my opinion, there were probably 2 or 3 matches that were well worth watching. The only problem is it was an absolute train wreck. I mean, it was like if someone was like, you know, I'm going to check AAA out, they wouldn't have made it to those good 3 matches. I will say shout out to Joe Dombrowski and Larry Dallas, who did the English commentary, which is infamous for it's Matt Stryker and Vampiro for their banter back and forth, which is just so awful. And it's why every year I just default to voting Matt Stryker as worst announcer, just because I can hear his voice, his shrill on the AAA broadcasts. And here you have 2 guys that picked up the product for the first time that like actually knew the storylines. They knew who the guys were. I mean, Larry Dallas is a really good wrestling mind. And so listening to him kind of with his heelish commentary, it was good. It was it kind of kept things together. But in all reality, the first 2/3 of the show was an absolute mess. It didn't help that it was raining. I mean, and when I say raining, it was like a downpour the entire show, which I should preface it by saying it's in an outdoor baseball stadium, which looked cool. Great. Yeah. It had a great appearance. But the big issue I always have with AAA shows is it's just people coming and going. I think people just like kind of passing by the ring, like, oh, I'll just interject myself into this match. And there's heel refs that like will fast count for the heels And then for no explanation at all, still being the heel ref, will then slow count for a baby face, but then 5 minutes later, fast count the baby face. There's no consistency. It's a mess until you get to the main events. The one match worth going to see was the Rey de Reyes, which is kind of like a showcase MVP type match, and you had Psycho Clown defeating Cybernetico, who's back in action in a AAA ring after
yes.
20
I watched
years.
the debut of him at the Triple Mania show, and I had no fucking clue who this guy was. Great name, though.
Cybernetico, and if you listen at all to any of the Observer radio broadcasts where Dave and Brian talk about how he was bad then and he's bad now, that's spot on analysis right there. It was the most underwhelming, big return to the ring I think I've ever witnessed. Heavy Metal, who was another throwback guy who apparently had some beef with Cybernetico from 15 years ago, but I can't remember a time when they even fought in the ring. So that was kind of, but then you had Bandito and Laredo Kid, who between those two just doing high flying, spectacular moves, corkscrew planchas out to the floor, trying to kill themselves, mind you, in a rainstorm, throwing Psycho Clown, who, if anything, the dude entertains. Psycho Clown did emerge victorious, had his kids in the ring. They presented him with what was apparently Drew McIntyre's sword that they maybe borrowed from WWE, and that was a big award. So Psycho Clown wins, and he is the Rey de Reyes champion of 2022. Then you were supposed to have the Lucha Brothers, Penta and Phoenix. Phoenix had come down and said he couldn't wrestle. His arm was still healing, and they were supposed to fight Dralistico and Dragon Lee in a tag team match to determine apparently the number one contenders to take on FTR. And so that just kind of without any announcement, even to the amazement of the English announcers, who were like, well, I guess we're not getting a tag team match, and it's going to be Pentagon Jr. and against Dralistico, which was a really kind of fell apart at the very end, but again, a really solid match. Dragon Lee interfered at the end. They ripped Penta's mask off. Phoenix was trying to get down. The doctors wouldn't let him in. So it sounds like it sets up a match later down the road between these two teams, which would be a pretty fucking great match.
The doctors wouldn't let the guy run.
I
saw the video of it.
Did you see that? It was like he was crying when they were beating down Penta, ripping his mask off, and Phoenix was like, he was actually in tears. And there was a doctor team that was probably doing more damage than if he would have done it, would just run down. They cleared the ring, ripping at him. You could see him trying to keep his arm off to the side where it's not getting pulled or something by these doctors and ringside people. But the real highlight of the show, which anytime you get an opportunity, if it wants to get, I'm sure it'll end up on YouTube or Twitch or something. Got to check out the former Johnny Mundo, John Morrison, mayor of Slamtown, whatever other title or name he used to have, but now Johnny Superstar in AAA, taking on Hijo del Vikingo, who is the mega champion, formerly the championship formerly held by Kenny Omega. That was a great match. And the stuff that these guys pulled in a driving rainstorm, and it was its heaviest rain was when they were fighting, and you could see them up there on a top rope, oh my God, and just the moves that they were hitting in just the terrible conditions. And there was to a point where they actually were down, and they did a few moves off the ring apron onto the floor. And it was probably safer than trying to do it off the top rope onto into the ring. So, but the Vikingo defended his title, and it was a spectacular match. It was at least, given the weather, which held it back a little bit, I would say at least 4.5 stars, if not more. But
I gotta go back and check that one out.
That's one that you definitely want to go. The Penta and Dralistico is actually a pretty good match. But yeah, the Johnny Superstar, and Hijo del Vikingo, definitely worth checking out.
My problem with AAA is always that exactly what you said. You've got to weed through hours of God only knows what to get to the things that are actually spectacular. And then the things that are spectacular don't even feel like they've come from the same promotion.
You're exactly right. It's like you watch the first 2/3 or first half of the show and you're like, this is the same promotion. Like, how come the rest of that couldn't have been?
And before we move on to the New Japan stuff, I'll just say that I see people say that AAA gets a bad rap because they'll have these shows that go exactly like the Triple Mania and Rey de Reyes went, where it's disaster after disaster, and then they finish strong. And I'll see people say that it gets a bad rap and that people only tune in to those shows and then that happens. And like, by this point, I've watched plenty of AAA shows. I don't know what the fuck they're talking about. It happens on every single show.
Every single show.
And people talk about the WWE shows being horribly paced. Those AAA shows are paced like nobody is rented out anything, and they can just do whatever they want.
At one point, there was like at least a 20-minute break where there was like nothing.
Oh, God.
And like we were like trying to figure out. They kept running guys. They did some video package. And early on, you had the English and the Spanish commentary overlapping on top of one another.
Great.
to the point where I had to put it on mute and pull up closed captioning on my computer so I could see what they were saying. But yeah, some spectacular matches in an otherwise train wreck of a show.
Yeah, that's about AAA in a nutshell. We'll move to the New Japan matches, and this is from the New Japan New Year's Golden Series.
Yes.
And I only saw the Naito versus Okada world title match in full. I was watching the Sonata versus Tanahashi match, and I didn't get to the end of it because we were running up against the time. But I will say in that match, which you can kind of go over the rest of it, but I will say that, and I know he didn't do it in this match, but it does amaze me that Sonata was able to figure out a move as complex as the Paradise Lock, yet the concept of putting on a submission at the end of a match and just holding on to it, that is foreign to him. But he's figured out this Paradise Lock that nobody else can figure out on the first try, and it takes him multiple attempts, but whatever.
I mean, I will give Tanahashi credit. He finally locked it in. I think he's the only one. Did you get to that part in the match?
I did, yeah.
Tanahashi figured it out. It took him enough time that Sonata should have punched him in the face at one point. Just like, fuck you. You can't figure out how to do my move. But yeah, you just wonder how many singles titles or just championships in general Sonata would actually have under his belt if he would just stop releasing a submission hold when the guy is completely out to do a moonsault. I think
the number would make him retire if we actually.
You'd be talking about one of the all-time greatest, I think, at this point. Just leave it locked in. There's nothing wrong with a submission win, but he did, moonsault and he got he won the United States Championship. And as we talk about these New Japan Cup brackets, I'm going to highlight a couple of potential matchups of challengers that could come down the road for Big Sonata, but definitely a good match. I mean, I think these are like one match shows. I mean, you run a lot of 6-man, a lot of 8-man. You kind of work your way through the show to catch some highlights and what have you, but that's definitely one that's worth checking out. The only one. The tag match was pretty good as well, with Okada and Naito kind of facing off, but which leads us to the second night of the show, which was really you saw Okada and Naito.
Yes, that was it was really great. So I don't know why Naito is insistent on killing himself, but I sit and react to some of these AEW Canadian destroyers and these brutal head landings, and then I watch Naito take 3 DDTs and somehow make all of them look sane.
Yeah, right.
3 straight DDTs, one on the apron, one on the floor, and then another in the ring, and he stamps himself on his head. Kevin Kelly said it best. He looks like an exclamation point, and that's exactly what he looked like.
That's very true.
But the early on part of this match, it was every Okada Naito match ever. And then around the halfway point, as it tends to do, it just kicks into this different gear. And the wrestling is so phenomenal. And the two guys are doing these convoluted series of things, even though most of the moves are simple stuff that you've seen them do. It's just when two guys wrestle so often, I'm kind of sitting there going like, okay, what are the things we can do that don't involve them killing themselves that they can like add? And every time they figure out a way to differ it enough that by the end, like I didn't think Naito was going to win, but I also don't have the weekly New Japan viewing, at least the Japanese stuff, where I know for sure that he's not going to win, like some of the weekly American television. So there's always that chance, it feels, because you never know what direction they're going to go. I mean, for God's sakes, Evil was the world champion at one point. So you never know.
You do, and that's why. And I think these guys. I mean, it's like when you talk about that upper echelon of professional wrestlers. I think that's why Okada and the likes of Naito and Tanahashi and those guys in New Japan, they get the credit that they do. I mean, because like at one point, you're like, well, maybe he could win, and then on multiple points, you're like, oh my God, he's going to win. And at the end of the day, when Okada's hand gets raised, you're like, oh, yeah, of course Okada was going to win the whole time. But, really spectacular. I mean, he pulled off that Stardust press.
Yeah. That was the point in the match for me where I started to think, okay, well, how often do you see him do that? I was kind of thinking maybe, like just maybe, he'll get a little run here at the end and come out victorious. And
yeah, exactly, because they were the throwbacks to like when they fought before, and that's where Kevin Kelly and Chris Charlton are so great, because they have that history, and I'm sure it's right in front of them and it's researched. But it's like how they use it of like, oh my God, that's the 2013, it's like, dude, really? Like you remember that 9 years ago? But they do. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute. And that was in this match, which led to this and led to that. Oh my God, this could be happening again, because it would be a New Japan kind of thing to do. Which just, and it was interesting that the match went 29 minutes. It was the shortest world championship match of the 8 that there have been. Everything else has been over 30, but it was one of those where it was such a perfectly done 29 minutes that it was really, really enjoyable, and probably the best match I've seen, definitely of the week and of the last couple of weeks as well.
Yeah, and it's just interesting, all of the timing and the placements of some of the things that they do. I mean, the whole my criteria for New Japan matches during the time that they're in with the limited fans and whatnot, and the not being allowed to cheer. My criteria is if you can get the Japanese people who are a rule following society and who don't want to cause any problems for people, if you can get them to actively start making noise with their mouths because they're just so shocked that they can't follow the rule of no cheering, then you've done something pretty special. So that's how I rate. And when they both popped right up after the 2 big moves.
Oh yeah.
The German and the drop kick, that was where things really went into a different gear too. So I really enjoyed it, and I always do.
Yeah. I had my notes were that I really enjoyed the crowd all together. You know what I mean? And like even just kind of scrolling through the earlier match in the show, it was, and in that match in particular, they're maybe a little louder now, like you said, toward the end when they do come unglued a little bit, as much as this very reserved Japanese crowd can get unglued right now. The other thing that I came to appreciate a little bit, that I think inside the ropes, and I can't count outside the ropes because he's one of the worst. It's the exact opposite. But inside the ropes, is there a better official than Red Shoes?
No, there's not. And that's why the stuff on the outside is so noticeable and why it's so easy to get on him.
Right?
Is because he does such a good job and his facial expressions are so good.
Oh my God, he's so great.
And then he'll allow for like a 120 count outside of the ring. And he'll wait until somebody is dead on the floor and the other guy has returned to the ring, and then he'll start counting.
And I will give him credit out there. Like, he'll have a completely disgusted look and be like, well, fine, I have to go in and count now. after a guy takes like three moves on the ramp, he's hitting the head with a chair, completely knocked out. Red Shoes just disgusted. He won't disqualify you. He'll just go in and count the guy out. That it's the most preposterous thing. Like, why not go in and say, I'm not counting. So there, I'm going to let him get back in the ring and you can't go out there.
Would be a very Red Shoes
yeah,
thing
inside,
to do.
You're right. Like, his facial expressions, and like, you just watch him, like, these guys were taking moves. It's like, just the way he reacts to them just adds so much to the match and to really the overall impact of what you're seeing. So shout out to Red Shoes for a great job inside the ring. Outside, dude, come on. Inside, awesome.
The next bit of news, which this is something that is absolutely flabbergasting to me. I had mentioned to Fish before we'd started recording that they were going to do this, and there might be some people from other promotions in the 48-man field that has been announced for the New Japan Cup. I was wrong in less than a day because I'm looking at this list of people, of which there are 48. And I don't know why they insisted. I think that New Japan, this whole more for the sake of more thing, I don't know that it's making much of it any better.
I'm looking at this list, and I think isn't Shima the only guy that's a non?
It looks like all New Japan guys.
Yeah.
Well, here's what we'll do. In an attempt to make this under an hour, we'll see if I can somehow get all 48 men in under an hour. I'll read them through real quick.
Okay, here we go.
Kazuchika Okada, El Desperado, Master Wato.
2 hours later.
Hiromu Takahashi, Sho, Minoru Suzuki. A ton of people. There was a couple matches that I know you had highlighted that you were looking to talk about. In this field, what have you got?
I've got I mean, if you look up in the bracket, I'm off the website, so I don't know if we're looking at the same thing.
I'm looking right at the bracket. New
Japan. Okay, so I've got the top left bracket with Okada at the top.
Yeah.
And first of all, the most ludicrous thing is who gets buys.
It's fucking ridiculous.
It is literally like they must have, that ping pong ball machine that like everyone is like clamoring for the WWE to bring back for the Royal Rumble, where they would pick the ball. Clearly, New Japan has stolen that machine and literally puts 48 names in that thing, rounds it up, and draws their pairings, because it's the most ludicrous thing that your world champion of all people don't get a bye. However, if you look at his bracket, you might as well give him one just giant bye right into the finals, because other than a Tai Chi, that's if he can get by Toru Yano. I don't see anyone in that bracket that will even. I mean, I have Okada penciled in as a final four. I mean, who's going to beat him? Hiroki Goto, the Toru Yano fan account favorite, Dick Togo, who by the way has a bye. Probably
yes, he sure does.
Just because of the heat that he gets, But yeah.
Well, here's another one for you. El Desperado. IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion.
Yeah.
And somehow his tag team partner, who hasn't done shit, is the guy who gets the bye in the same division of matches.
And how do you get the junior champion and the world champion who have to fight each other in the first round? Like the very first match of the tournament, one of those two is going to be eliminated. Just preposterous. But down at the bracket underneath, again, three names that pop out of potential Final Fours are Tanahashi, Jeff Cobb, and Naito.
You don't think Gato, who has given himself a bye,
he gave himself a bye? He should win Booker of the Year. He should have given himself 2 byes. Yeah, like I mean, assuming that Jeff Cobb is healthy and ready to roll. I mean, if he wasn't, they probably would have at least given him a bye. But clearly, either that or Gato's like, "Fuck you, Jeff Cobb. Fuck you and your injuries. I'll show you, and you'll have to fight Togi Makabe on top of it."
Yeah. Why does Dookie get a bye? I'm just reading some of these. What is going on?
I have no idea. But really, you've got a potential Naito Tanahashi matchup, which would be in the round of 16, I guess. And then you've got Jeff Cobb, who would be coming out of the bottom, who would be a quarterfinal matchup with a Naito or Tanahashi. And I know it's New Japan, and I know you're going to get the people that the big upsets and what have you. But I mean, the reality is one of those three is probably, I'd like to see Jeff Cobb Okada rematch. They're 1-1 in the series, and let Cobb go over and get him into the New Japan Cup Finals. And which will get me to as we go to the other side, an interesting matchup potentially for the final. But that at least gives Jeff Cobb another shot with a win over Okada. Puts him in another title match, which he
also wrestled Naito at the Tokyo Dome show this past year. So he would have to, and Jeff Cobb is in the bottom half. So in the round of 16, you could get Jeff Cobb versus Naito. And then if what you're saying is going to happen, that means that Jeff Cobb, who's deserved something like this forever, he would have to beat Naito and Okada in consecutive matches to advance to the...
Yeah, that would be... And they've done such a great job building him up as like just this athletic monster.
If he does that, he doesn't even have to win the thing.
No, he can lose, which gets me to the other side of the bracket up top. When you look at that top bracket, you've got some potential great matchups you've got depending who wins the Ibushi Great-O-Khan match, and I'm not putting it by the Great-O-Khan of getting that victory.
Oh, he easily could.
But you have a potential Ibushi Ishimori matchup, which, I mean, whoever has to fight them next, which could be Zack Sabre Jr., those two may kill one another. Yeah. And that may be a round of 16 bye for whoever advances in the lower bracket. But you have some potential up there, but you're really looking at like Ibushi, Okan, and Sabre Jr., Zack Sabre Jr. as the three up top. And then underneath, I mean, if Will Ospreay isn't in the finals, like, is that not just the biggest crime? That here's a guy that I think, one, you have a potential matchup against Sonata, which immediately gives Will a chance to take the IWGP United States title. And with as much as he's been in the United States and he's coming back, could you see him returning to Warrior Wrestling?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
With the IWGP and being on tour in the United States for the New Japan show on the 16th of April. And maybe that's where we get a Sonata, Will Ospreay, IWGP, US championship match. But you've got that potential. You've got, Ospreay potentially against Zack Sabre Jr., against Kota Ibushi. You've got some pretty strong matchups there. You got an Ospreay El Phantasmo matchup, which, I mean, that's a pretty strong, you've got potential for some pretty strong matches up top there.
And the Zack Sabre Jr. Will Ospreay match from the New Japan Cup last year was also outstanding. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind seeing that again. And also, now that you've put the idea in my head, I hope that they do the Will Ospreay versus Sonata match for the title before he comes back to the United States, so that I can see him wrestle someone who is not Sonata when we
That
go
is
and
great.
see
Yes, that would be great. As much potential as there would be in that match. We all know what the ending would be when as soon as he releases the hold and goes up top to.
And since I know who's going to win, maybe
Yeah.
let's give us a new match.
Yeah, I agree. And then in the bottom bracket there, I mean, this is what I don't understand. You've got Ishii versus Shingo in the first round. One Tangaloa, who just got turned on and booted out of the Bullet Club by Jay White. What was that? Is that like a consolation? Oh, sorry, you're out of the Bullet Club, but here we'll give you a bye. But and Tama Tonga as well. But you got Ishii and Shingo Takagi in a first round match. It's like those guys it's going to be a banger. It's going to be one of the best matches in the tournament. And there it is. One of those guys being gone, like Shingo couldn't have fought like Tangaloa in the first round, or Ishii couldn't have fought him and at least get out to the second round. And then underneath it, you have Chase Owens, Jotto, and Tiger Mask. I don't completely understand it. You figure in the lower half of that, Evil's probably going out. It'll be an interesting matchup against Tama Tonga. And then you've got Minoru Suzuki with a potential matchup either against Sho or Hiromu, which I would love to see those matches. But it's like you got to figure Suzuki, Evil, Takagi, Ishii.
Well, let's just go ahead and do this. I've just been looking at this and coming up with my own little predictions here.
Okay.
I'll give you my final four, who is going to make it to the finals, and the winner.
Okay.
And then you can give me yours.
I have mine. I have my note card. I have mine written down as well. Okay.
All right. So my final four is Zack Sabre Jr., Shingo Takagi on the right side, and Okada versus Jeff Cobb on the left side. And then I've got Jeff Cobb versus Zack Sabre Jr. in the finals, and I have Jeff Cobb beating him.
Okay. I have Okada coming out of the top bracket. I have Cobb coming out of the bottom. I have Shingo coming out of the bottom. But interestingly, in the bracket, I guess what would it be in the Elite Eight? I actually have Tama Tonga out against Shingo. I think they're going to give Tama Tonga singles push. I think getting him out of Bullet Club. I just have a gut feel that he's going to advance a couple rounds here and even defeat Evil and probably even Minoru Suzuki in doing so. I've got Shingo. Now I do have Ospreay up on the top coming out, but I have Shingo defeating Ospreay in the semifinal, and I've got a Shingo Jeff Cobb final with Jeff Cobb winning as well. I think Cobb is the winner this year.
Is Ospreay still the British champion?
He's still, British champion. He's the undisputed British champion.
Got it.
So I think
the reason I'm going the way that I'm going is because I just feel like they're not going to do too much of the exact same thing that happened last year. And we've seen a bunch of Will Ospreay Shingo matches. It probably makes sense not to do one for a while.
Yeah.
We've seen plenty of Will Ospreay beating Zack Sabre. And I think that it would make sense. Zack Sabre has won the tournament before. He's been the British heavyweight champion before. In the last 2 years, they'd be 1-1 against each other. Yeah. And then Jeff Cobb can get his stablemate's revenge in the finals. And it elevates Will Ospreay can only be elevated so much further than he already is, winning in the tournament or not. And I think that gives Jeff Cobb a chance to become a second real big major player in that United Empire.
Yeah, I think so. The only one that we differ on is Zack Sabre Jr. and Osprey, and I could definitely see your take on that.
And I'm just trying to think Gato instead of thinking what I would actually do if this were my tournament.
Yeah, if this were my tournament, well, it probably would have about 12 guys that didn't belong to New Japan.
Yeah,
and I would be.
It would be a 16-man tournament if it were my tournament.
Yeah. How about that? I'd go WWE and have some fatal 4-way qualifiers.
Yeah.
And then just eliminate guys left and right. But I mean, listen, if they can navigate through with they've been snake bitten as much as anybody by COVID and everything else, and having to kind of start and stop. If they can navigate through this 48-man field without any stoppages and actually get to the end, I'll give them a lot of credit. Even if it is all of their guys. I mean, the other thing is, you couldn't bring some LA Dojo guys over. You couldn't bring a filthy Tom Lawler or Carl Fredericks or any of those guys. I don't.
No.
No. The answer, no. No. That would be no. Instead, we get Gato and
it's going to be a Gato Jado final. That's the actual prediction.
Oh my God. I've got in the God, wouldn't it be funny? I've got Dick Togo in the finals. And maybe going up against Yudo Nakashima.
Okay. Well,
maybe Doki.
All right. Well, this has gone on long enough.
It's spiraled out of control. Yeah, but that should be fun. Yep.
I think there will be great matches scattered throughout the tournament. There always is.
Yes, without question.
We're about to talk main event, Wrestling Observer Newsletter year-end awards.
Yep.
They've been out for a while. Me and Fish did our little pseudo game show for it the other day, and today me and Big Dave are going to give you a little bit of a breakdown on our thoughts about some of the awards, people who might have been left out, things of that nature.
So I did vote, and I had Kenny Omega as my 1, Shingo 2, and Roman Reigns is 3. You get points for first, second, and third. So I can't really dispute the. I kind of debated on Bryan Danielson. But I felt like, okay, Roman Reigns, I mean, he had a really good year. And, so it was hard for me not to put him in the top 3. I think Shingo was great, carried New Japan, and Kenny was Kenny. I mean, he had a legendary year, and but otherwise, I don't really have any names that jump out. I mean, is there anyone that you think could have been on that list of the top 10?
Nobody that it's egregious that they're left off. I think the biggest takeaway for me is I also would agree that Shingo Takagi was the number 2, but I also think about this from a perspective of there's always going to be more people who are watching the WWE than there are New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yeah.
And there's more barriers to get into it. So I will say that I can totally accept the way that this panned out because Roman Reigns only took second place by 32 votes. So Shingo kept it close, which given the exposure difference, I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah. Yeah. No doubt. So then we slide down to the most outstanding wrestler.
We got Shingo Takagi in first, Bryan Danielson in second, Kenny Omega in third, Will Ospreay in fourth. And a couple of the highlights. Rey Fenix was in sixth. The Tomohiro Ishii was in eighth. Couple of honorable mentions. Was there anybody you thought should have been lifted from honorable mention into the actual top 10?
No. I mean, in most years, you would have like maybe an Ibushi who could be up there, but he was injured a lot. I mean, Jonathan Gresham is the surprise to me was like, I get it. I mean, his singles matches and like Nick Jackson, pretty incredible that he got 61 votes and made the honorable mention. But otherwise, like, yeah, no one, like, Okada had a really good year, but like, I think 2022, he's going to be back in that bigger conversation. I think he's going to be more predominantly featured. So, I mean, once again, I did not have Kenny Omega in my top three, believe it or not. And I had voted Bryan Danielson as number one.
Okay.
I had
a little bit of a skew, but
yeah, Danielson, Takagi, and then I actually had Will Ospreay in third place over a Kenny Omega. So.
I mean, and I'll talk about it as we go through, but there are some awards that I have issue with just because, like, most outstanding is a very vague award. What you consider outstanding is going to vary from person to person. And I guess
Right.
a lot of these awards are, up to how people interpreted things. But when it comes to most outstanding, like, I could make a really strong case that Zack Sabre Jr., given the style he wrestles and being featured so prominently and never having to kill himself and still having all these great matches, I could make an argument that he, more so than anyone on this list, is the most outstanding. Because when you look at the people on this list, Danielson, severe concussion problems, neck issues. Shingo Takagi, the guy's going to have such a hard time walking when he's older. Everybody knows the injuries Kenny's gone through. Will's neck, Ray Phoenix's arm. Ishii probably isn't going to have isn't going to age well. Okada in the honorable mention, everybody knows his history. Ibushi injured. I mean, or just coming back from injury. So I could make a really strong case that Zack and obviously there were people who thought about it in terms of that because he did get 107 votes. So, or 107 points rather. I don't know how many votes he got, but so that's one of the things with this award is, but the one thing I do like about it is it makes the top 3 or 4 a little more closely contended because people think about things differently. Whereas some of these awards, it's like, I don't want a guy to be listed as the 10th overall if he received 8 votes. Like, we can just cap it at like 5 if there's not enough people. So,
yeah, no, I think the Zack Sabre Jr. argument is pretty strong because that guy's going to have a fairly normal life when he's 65 or 70 years old. I don't know many of these other guys can say the same.
Yeah, so I mean, it's the price you pay to be most outstanding.
Yep. Agreed. Tag team of the year.
This was easy for me. This was the Young Bucks, and I guess I would have voted Penta and Phoenix in it too. But I really do think that FTR are easily the better tag team of the two groups.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I think I had the Young Bucks. I had the Usos. I had Young Bucks, FTR, and then the Usos as the third. I had the Lucha Bros were fourth for me, and then actually Zack Sabre Jr. and Tai Chi were fifth on my list. But I think I look at this list and I don't know that there's any tag team like that I look at and go, oh man, this was a glaring omission. At least for this year. Is there anyone that?
I mean, I guess you could sit there and say that there are other tag teams that could have been on the list, but if you were to force me to pick somebody from the 10 that needed to be removed, I don't know that I could.
Yeah.
I don't know that I could strongly pick one of these people in the 5 through 10 spot and definitively say that another team belongs in there over them.
Yeah. No, I agree.
And I'm glad Zack Sabre and Tai Chi got their recognition as the number 4 tag team of the year because they are New Japan's only tag team seemingly. So it's good to know that they got some recognition
and got 23 first place votes on top of it.
Yeah. Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I would say so. So, yeah.
Here's another vague one. The next one is best on interviews. But like, if you sit here and think about it, most of MJF's speaking, he's not being interviewed. He's talking back and forth with somebody or he's cutting a promo in the ring.
And when you read the description of like when Dave comes out with like a reminder of like what all the awards are, he does say that it's based on. It used to be based on a traditional interview, but it's more promotional and the ability to talk. So
should just call it best promo. It'd make a little bit more sense.
Right? Yeah. It would like someone, the casual fan would go, oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yes. Like Fish was starting to think of all of the people who did. When I asked him who the best on interviews were, he was starting to think of people who had been interviewed in a sit down by Jim Ross or people who had been interviewed backstage by Tony Schiavone. Like that's immediately what he thought of.
Yeah. Well, just about like most of the interviews, like in the ring with Tony Schiavone, like I guess they're the interviews, even though most people shoo him away and just grab the microphone. He just disappears.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess that's an interview.
Yeah.
But anyway, the people in this category, MJF won. He was first place. Eddie Kingston came in second place. And CM Punk was in third, followed by Jon Moxley at 4. And the top 3 guys were in a class of their own. Jon Moxley was off by a little under 2,000 points between 4th and 3rd. Not to say anything negatively about Jon Moxley, because obviously his promos, interviews, whatever you want to call them, are outstanding.
Yep.
And then the back half here, I think all people that are very worthy. I'm surprised Dan Lambert made it so high, but I mean, it doesn't. Yeah. It's not like it doesn't make any sense. It makes sense. So we got Dan Lambert at 5, Roman Reigns at 6, Paul Heyman at 7, Don Callis 8, Bryan Danielson 9, and Miro at 10.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, this was top heavy. I agreed. I had MJF 1, and I flip flopped CM Punk and Kingston. You know, but like you said, there's like a 2,000 point drop off after that. You know, but you did have quite a few people getting. It's like Don Callis, 44 first place votes. He had the most of like the bottom 7. But it was either like first place or bust for Don because he finished 8th. But yeah, I thought. I mean, it's those 3 and then everybody else this year, as far as I'm concerned. So.
And unfortunately, just with the nature of the awards being what they are, coming out, their year-end awards, Don Callis, if he had sat out the first 3 months instead of the last 3 months of the year, you never know how much higher he could have placed.
Yeah. Would he have broke through those top 3? Some of his best work, too, were interviews that he did. I remember the one snowstorm promo? It was like up in like outdoors. Like, yeah, that was classic. But again, it's a Twitter interview or a YouTube interview and like nowhere on even AEW or Impact TV. And that was some of his best stuff. But love Don.
Moving on down, we've got the Promotion of the Year award, which this all made sense to me in terms of who won. And then it just seems like a bunch of promotions tied to some darts and then thrown in the dark. I mean, it's not that any of them don't deserve to be on here, but the order in which they're on here is a little weird to me. So All Elite Wrestling in a landslide victory by over 2,200 points was the first place.
Yeah.
Followed by Stardom at number 2, which I'm not saying Stardom is bad. I don't often watch. I very rarely watch. I know that it's good. I just can't believe it got that much recognition in a voting scenario, given the exposure.
Yeah.
It beat out the 3rd place promotion of New Japan Pro Wrestling, which, granted, Stardom received a ton of first place votes. Yeah. And so that is ultimately what propelled them into 2nd, because Stardom had 158 first place votes. New Japan only had 17.
Yeah. I mean, so 158.
So their supporters are rad.
Yeah. Like 790 of their points of the 2,070 was first place votes alone. I mean, that's those are people that just love that promotion. And I know you go on Twitter and you can always find them. And they have a great product. I've watched a couple shows in the last year or so, and it's just hard to follow. Consistently follow to understand storylines and stuff.
And similarly, the following the fourth through 10th place, this description applies to all of them, maybe with the exception of DDT. I watch here and there when I hear there's a good match on all these promotions, but they are not things that I keep up with. So I can't even really say whether they do or don't belong on here. Fourth is Game Changer. Fifth is the UFC. Sixth is WWE. Seventh, Pro Wrestling Noah. Eighth, Impact Wrestling. 9 is DDT. 10 is Dragon Gate, and Ring of Honor was the sole honorable mention.
I mean, WWE is that polarizing, entity that you're going to get the handful of people that love them and vote for them, and the other half is going to vote for them in another category that we'll touch on at some point. It's a love-hate.
There's just so much exposure that it's almost impossible for them not to get on a lot of these lists.
Yeah. The rest of them, I thought for the times I have watched Impact, I mean, their product is so much better than what it was. They got a long way to go, though, to get up into that mainstream conversation.
Look, I know it's not what it used to be, and all respect to the people who have turned it around, but the fact that they've even survived this long is a Wrestling Observer Award in itself.
It is. An 8th place finish is a well-deserving award.
Yeah.
For that.
Next award is the Best Weekly TV Show, which this is probably the one that makes the most sense to me in the order that it was placed. We've got Dynamite at 1 in a landslide. Over its second show, the AEW Rampage came in second, followed by New Japan Strong, which is New Japan's American show, which is on the Roku channel and something else. Followed by SmackDown at 4, Impact at 5, WWE NXT at 6, Ring of Honor at 7, We Are Stardom at 8, AEW Dark made 9, and NXT UK rounds it off at 10, which I cannot imagine that WWE NXT is better than NXT UK.
Well, if it was the old NXT Black and Gold, which I think that's what this, since in the worst TV show 2.0 shows up.
Okay, all right, you're right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that would justify that placement. I'm a big the only two that I flip-flopped, and I've watched it pretty regularly, is I did have the New Japan Strong show at second over Rampage. And
Rampage is a fun, easy watch, but the marquee value of some of the matches is significantly less than that of Dynamite and even the New Japan Strong, where you're going to see titles defended. And like whenever Filthy Tom defends that title, like sometimes I know that he's going to win, but there are other times where I don't know, they might be putting it on one of these young lions with the dojo guys. They're good enough. So
there have been just it's very much like Rampage, and that it's an easy watch. It's usually 3 matches, and it's really it's strong. I mean, it's good
strong
content where you look at it and go, all right. And they had some Ring of Honor guys and that have come over, and some of the talent is from their LA dojo, and it's a good show. It's hard to argue Rampage at 2, but
it is hard to argue Rampage at 2, but I will say, granted, New Japan Strong doesn't have like that big marquee value either. But the one thing that I'll always love about that show is that, yes, it's a short show. It's an easy watch, but like there are some times where I watch Rampage and I don't even know why a match was made and put on television.
Yeah.
Like those ones where we sit there and go, oh, sounds like a dark match made its way onto TV. Like that is never anything that happens on New Japan Strong.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. So, but I think the top 3 once again was, and SmackDown, Mark Henry's former favorite show, at 4. If you talk about the best WWE product, it's clearly the best product that they have, which, more in spite of them rather than because of them.
Mm-hmm. But, the last major pro wrestling award, the last A category award for pro wrestling, is the Pro Wrestling Match of the Year, which mine didn't win, but it's on here. What did you vote for in first place?
I actually voted for the winner, and I went back and forth. I loved the Ospreay Shingo match, and I juggled those 2 back and forth. And at one point was actually going to have Shingo and Ospreay first. And I think the tipping point for me was the fact that the Young Bucks, and we were there and we saw it live. And that's one of these matches that, like, a lot of times, like, you'll see it live and then go and watch it on TV and it's like, oh, okay, it was better live. I don't know that, like, it was great live. It was unbelievable. One of the best matches I've easily ever seen in my life. And then I went home and watched it, and I had like the same level of feel. Like I wasn't like, I think I've watched that match 2 or 3 times. And so I did give that only because I was there for the tag match, the cage match versus Shingo and Ospreay. Now, before I reveal my third match, what was your match that didn't make it?
I just had them flipped. I had the Will Ospreay and Shingo match in first, and the Bucks match in second.
What was it? Did you have a third place?
I did. It was Omega Danielson.
Omega Danielson. Okay. Yeah. See, I actually went Adam Page and Kenny.
I was surprised that fell. I was surprised that fell so far down the list, but it just goes to show how great some of the other stuff was. I couldn't believe. I figured that would at least be in the top 5.
Yeah. So I was surprised as well. I mean, it's the long time payoff, the long time storyline, the final payoff, Hangman Page winning. I love that match. And
it was an awesome cap to what they were doing. That would have been my 4th, and then probably Danielson and Adam Page, the draw, would have been my 5th.
Yeah. I had that next over Omega. I had Omega Danielson next after that. I loved that Walter Ilya Dragunov match, just because.
It was incredible.
That was so. I mean, you can argue these other ones too. The fact that the one thing that just to highlight is the fact that Will Ospreay and Shingo, it was almost like they were the collective Okada. Okada in previous years, who, like, his name would be up and down, and he and Kenny, had multiple, matches the one year where you have 2 guys that have the number 2 and number 9 match, and not just one guy in there. And for the one guy, you look at Danielson. I mean, 3 matches and you look and say Kenny, Page, and Minoru Suzuki. I mean, he really has had an incredible run and just some great matches. But I was surprised that the Britt Baker Thunder Rosa match didn't get a little more love. The Lights Out match, I thought that was pretty good. And as I was putting my kind of top 10 together, I definitely had that in my top 10. I think
it just happened too early.
Yeah, that's you're absolutely right. You've got to be.
It happened in March.
Yeah, yeah, it's got to be on that back half of the year. So,
if you look at it, there's only 2 matches on this entire list that took place before May.
Yeah. Yep.
And one of them was a Tokyo Dome match.
Yep. Yeah. So in your category B's, did you have any particular award that, like, as you scroll down and look through it, just jumped out?
Well, I'm 100% out on all of the regional MVP awards. I don't think that I think it's kind of a dumb award, just because
I don't get them.
I don't get them either. I don't know if it's like an inclusion thing or whatever, but, like, who's going to debate that Shingo Takagi was the Japanese MVP? He doubled the second place. You could have made a closer argument for the United States Canada MVP, but even so, Roman Reigns was back 500 plus votes of Kenny Omega. Like, these are awards that none of the victories, the closest victory was Will Ospreay over Walter.
Yeah.
And that they were separated by a little less than 50 votes. Aside from that, there isn't one that's close. And so I don't know why we're not taking the Mexico MVP, the Japanese MVP, the United States MVP, and both of the dudes from Europe, Will and Walter. And I don't know why it's not just a list of those 5 and one of those 5 wins MVP. And the other thing too, with some of these awards is I don't know a single professional sports league that will actively tell you which way some of the voters are leaning while the vote is going on.
Yeah.
Like there's hearsay and there's conjecture on social media over which writers are in favor of the steroid era guys and how many there might be for like baseball and stuff like that. And people identify as Bonds guys or Clemens guys, but that's because that's a very polarizing topic. But like while the voting is taking place, they're not on Sports Center telling us, oh, well, a lot of people are voting for Barry Bonds because it might influence the vote.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's kind of my other issue with some of the MVP awards, but it's an impressive list. All the people that should have won. So I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can't argue any of them.
The first one that jumps out to me really is the Danny Hodge non-heavyweight MVP award.
Yeah.
And I was really glad to see that Darby won it. I mean, you could make an argument for many guys.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised Hiromu was so far off, but he was hurt for a lot of the year.
Yeah.
But I mean, Darby is a very worthy pick, and I'm like happy that he got the recognition of that.
Yeah. I thought Darby like was an easy pick on that, and then I was second guessing my own pick. Like, who am I missing? And
I kind of went through like a landslide.
Yeah, I went through like this list and covered a lot of the guys that are on here, and I'm like, no, Darby should win in a landslide. If he doesn't, it's gonna be crazy.
Yeah, best box office draw. It was CM Punk 1, John Cena 2, Kenny Omega 3, Roman Reigns 4, Brock Lesnar 5. And I mean, the tough thing with the WWE guys is we'll almost never get to see who's watching these Peacock premium live events.
Right.
The only thing that we'll ever be able to really see for ourselves is the TV ratings. And I mean, they're a show that the ratings are down year over year all the time. So I don't know how Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar are the people keeping them afloat, it seems, and so they deserve to be on the list. But I think that Punk, Cena, and Omega are the right answers in those first 3. And I know it's based on statistics, so yes, they're supposed to be the right answer, but people will still argue that. So
how about the feud of the year?
I agreed with the Kenny Omega Hangman Page thing.
I thought that was probably correct.
I can't think of another one that was as impactful for the promotion that it was in than that one.
Yeah. Most improved, Ty Conti.
Well deserved, I thought.
Yeah. I had the other one, and it's not really the fact that he improved. I just think that he was pushed correctly was Jeff Cobb.
Oh yeah.
I mean, New Japan pushed him perfectly as a monster, athletic monster. I know the Japanese crowds have traditionally loved guys like him, but now you throw in the athleticism, and that I thought he was on a different level this year. Most charismatic, yeah. See, I mean, if the soul, if it's drawing, I think his description of most charismatic is the ability to elicit emotion from the crowd organically, without having to actually
write a political speech and dress up in an American Nightmare suit, which out there.
Which in that case, your top 3 is absolutely 100% on point again, and it's also the 3 guys who give the best interviews or promos because they're real and they're genuine. And boy, there's a shock. They're also the most charismatic. I mean, it's pretty simple.
And the impressive part about it for me is that CM Punk and Eddie Kingston, they go out there and it's hard to imagine that they're being anything but themselves. I mean, I know people say MJF is the guy that he is, but he's certainly turning it up for the sake of television. So, but the 2 other guys, that seems very aligned with just who they are.
Oh, without question.
The Bryan Danielson Award also caught my eye because Bryan Danielson won it, ending a legendary reign by Zack Sabre Jr. I think it's hilarious that it's been 16 years, 17 years, and only 2 different guys have won it in those in that time.
And the funny thing is, having seen Jonathan Gresham, I watched him. He wrestled Trey Miguel at a Warrior show.
He came up in the wrong era.
I'll tell you, if Danielson and Sabre aren't there, it's like he's a runaway. Like he's in one of those 2. He probably wins it. He's so great.
Yeah,
and
those are the only 2 people in his way ever.
you'll never get past those two guys. Never get past those two guys. So the only way he'll get past is if Danielson and Sabre both go to WWE, and then rest of them will.
Yeah, he'll have a chance then. Although Danielson did win it in WWE multiple times.
Yeah, that's true.
What'd you think of the Bruiser Brody Memorial Award? Because I threw Ishii up at number 1, and this was a pretty tightly contested top 3 as well.
It's hard to argue. I think I was looking for this one. I actually did vote for Moxley, but like those 3, Moxley, Kingston, Ishii are the 3 that I'm like, okay, well, let me just put in the 3 names in a hat, and on any given day, it could be any of those 3. So I have no problem with those.
I have no feeling one way or the other of putting any of those guys in any order.
Yeah, and like I very easily would not put like Nick Gage in there.
Yeah, he doesn't brawl. He does death matches. That's not right. The same thing.
Yeah, when you pull, as soon as you pull the pizza cutter out, which it's. Listen, it is what it is, and I know there's a lot of people who like the death matches, but to me that's not brawling. To me, brawling is you're in a fight, and
best flying wrestler. I had no feelings about this one way or the other. Ray Phoenix is as good a pick as any, I suppose.
Yeah.
Most overrated. This made my day because Evil is absolutely the right answer.
It shouldn't have been as contested.
No.
And I saw someone online, criticizing how can Roman Reigns be overrated? And this is one time when I absolutely agree, because every vote should have been cast toward Evil.
Yes. There shouldn't be a list here.
No, it just should say Evil, and then we move on, So they definitely got that one right, without question.
Same can be said for most underrated. I don't know that there's a guy less appreciated in his promotion than Ricochet.
Yeah. And the only other guy I can think of is probably Chad Gable, and he got a couple nibbles at number 2.
Yes, he did.
Yep, I agree.
Rookie of the year, Jade Cargill. I mean, when I sat back and thought about all of the people who were truly rookies, I suppose she's the winner.
When you take the whole picture of actually drawing some ratings, the presence on a TV show, whether she's good or bad in the ring, I mean, she's obviously way better than what she was when she started, and she's got light years to go to be one of the greatest, or even in that talk. But in terms of rookie, I mean, she was impactful. So I can't. Were there better wrestlers on the slate? Yeah, 16-year-old Nick Wayne is probably a far better wrestler than Jade Cargill is. But you know what? He's not walking around with the presence that she has on a nationally broadcast show. Once he turns 18, he might be. But I think Jade is probably the right pick here.
So there's really only one other one that I had more than a couple of sentences to say about. So if you don't mind, how about we fly through some of the ones that are not as contentious.
Let's jump on the highlights.
All right. So best non-wrestler, I had Don Callis ahead of Paul Heyman, but that's just because you've seen the Paul Heyman shtick once. You've seen it a million times. That doesn't make it any worse or better. It's still fantastic, but Don Callis and Kenny's antics, to me, for the 9 months or 11 months that they were, agree. To me, that just exceeded it.
I agree. I love Don this year.
The worst television announcer, I questioned why there are so many things that are awards that start with the word worst. Those don't sound like awards to me. But look, is Corey Graves sometimes not even focused on what's going on? Yes. But you can't convince me that Adnan Virk or Matt Stryker, a guy who was literally fired within 2 months of getting hired, and a guy who I can't believe is still employed doing commentary. I don't see how those two guys aren't considered the worst.
I told you earlier, and when we were talking about AAA, my automatic vote every year, whether he's employed or not, is Matt Stryker. How about best major show?
It's All Out and Full Gear, and none of the other ones that came in after that even mattered to me. I mean, I guess I put Wrestle Kingdom, one of the first night, at third, or whichever night the Ospreay match was. Just for that match, I'd put it at third, but none of the ones that are ranked underneath. I mean, you can see by the votes. All Out by a landslide, and then second place was Full Gear, where Hangman won the title by a landslide.
I agree. Those two, and then there was what else you got in here?
I have no thoughts on the worst major wrestling show. I tend not to watch things that I think are going to be bad, and all of these sounds bad to me going in. So the best wrestling maneuver, I don't know. Did you have any favorite maneuvers?
Yeah, I put Hangman on there. Oh no, I had the hidden blade by Will Ospreay.
Oh, okay, that made it.
You get the right opponent. That's just so great.
Worst television show. I don't even watch any of these shows, so I mean, it sounds like Raw is the right answer.
Yeah, Raw is the right answer.
The worst match of the year. Any of the three that were in the top three makes sense but I agree with the one that won because it's the only match that included zombies. So
yes, yep, I agree.
I don't know that there was any feud worse than Randy Orton versus The Fiend and Alexa Bliss. So that makes sense.
How it was bad, but for the sake of, I don't even know that did mine even get out? No, I had for some reason it just stuck out. I had the big Dewdrop Eva Marie feud.
Yeah, well, I think most people forgot about that.
Yeah, exactly. Therefore,
Tony Khan, congratulations for Booker and Promoter of the Year. Those are all weird awards to me.
Yeah, I did not vote Tony Khan for Promoter of the Year.
Who did you vote?
I voted Steve from Warrior Wrestling.
Oh, absolutely. Represents.
Only because you look at like what he has done to grow that promotion and just the shows that he's put on. He deserved. Next year, I'm going to get him on the honorable mention list.
Yeah, I was going to say that needs to be our new goal.
Yes,
as a podcast, get enough viewers that are subscribed to the newsletters that we can get Steve on the Promoter of the Year list.
Yeah, we got to do some politicking on that. So,
well, it's easy to sit and talk about all of the negative stuff that's down there at the bottom. I mean,
all right, let's go back to best announcer.
This is. Aside from Wrestler of the Year, for me, this is the main event because you're 100% right. If Kevin Kelly was just on American television every single week, that dude would win this award for a decade.
Yes. Kevin Kelly is so incredible because, a lot of people, I don't know that they realize that he did half the shows from like his house. And so it didn't make a difference. Like you would have never known. The emotion, the way he calls matches, his historical background on how he goes through things, his knowledge of the wrestlers, his knowledge of the moves. I mean, Kevin Kelly is the best wrestling announcer in the world.
Easily.
And listen, Excalibur is so much better than what I mean, you go back to the old PWG days, and it was a guy in a mask screaming like a madman, and he's gotten a lot better, and he deserves to be on the top 10 list. But there's only one name that deserves to be number one. That's Kevin Kelly.
Yeah, and I mean it was close for a guy who's not ever on television, and most of his work is done on a streaming service.
Yep.
And I don't want to make this about how I do not like Excalibur as an announcer, but the one thing that sticks out to me is something that you said earlier when we were talking about the New Japan matches. Kevin Kelly, you said that obviously he and Chris Charlton put research into this, and they probably got notes and stuff in front of them, but it's how they use it. And it's the emotion is the other thing you said. Kevin Kelly, it's like watching a guy announce as he's on an emotional roller coaster. as he's
Yes.
telling these stories, and he's
Yeah.
living and dying with Chris Charlton by some of the things that are going on.
Yeah.
And Excalibur, he lives and dies, you would think, based on every single second of every single match, because
Yes.
as much better as he's gotten, he's still, to me, a guy in a mask who yells. And yes,
Yeah.
he includes more storyline stuff, but like you said, it's how you use it. And I have never once had Excalibur provoke the emotional response in me that Kevin Kelly has, and it's not even close. But
Yeah.
it's cheating. It's kind of cheap to pick on Excalibur though, because I could say that about any other person on this list. It's just none of those other people came in first.
Yeah, if you take any of the names on the list and you put them at number one over Kevin Kelly,
But I'm saying the same thing. Just
we'd be making a similar argument. It might be a little different, but for the most part, Kevin Kelly is the best professional wrestling announcer in the business.
and shame on people for only having Chris Charlton as an honorable mention.
He is as valuable to that broadcast. I mean, to me, it's Kevin Kelly and Chris Charlton, 1, 2. Maybe that would be a good category. Wrestling announcing duos.
Yeah, I actually think it should be the wrestling announce team of the year.
Yeah,
I think that's what it should be.
That would be a great category. You could probably eliminate some of these worst somethings and put in announcing teams. I will say I am often, because I do watch quite a bit of SmackDown. I am entertained by Pat McAfee from an entertainment value. But I saw a lot of people trying to make arguments that he was the best wrestling announcer, and he should have won the award on the Twitter machine. No, he is a great sports entertainment announcer.
Yeah.
And for a guy who, with his background, he's great. I love Pat McAfee. He is not as good as Kevin Kelly.
No, and I will say,
never be.
No, he never will be. But I can't understand him being in 5th place for this, or whatever place he's in.
Yeah, 4th place.
Was it 4th place? Yeah, I can justify a top 5 finish for Pat McAfee because
without question.
Because let's be honest here, this is not a best technical commentator award. This is who people have connected with listening to the most. And when you look at every other announcer employed by that company, he is by far the most entertaining, regardless of what his technical ability is.
Yeah, I would agree. 100%. The biggest crime of any award on the Wrestling Observer Newsletter Awards, the best television announcer.
Yes.
We love you, Kevin Kelly.
We do. You should have won.
He's our champion.
He's our champion. Yeah, Excalibur, not my champion. Kevin Kelly.
No, I agree.
Was there anything else that jumped out on you before we go here?
No, I'm going to be interested to see the results of the Toro Yano fan account.
I might have to bring you back for that one.
His annual awards. He was like,
I've casted my votes.
Did you? Yep. Did you do it on the Twitter or did you do it on Survey?
I did it on the Twitter.
Yeah. So here's a flaw in his system. I did it on Survey Monkey, and then in turn came back and voted again.
Yeah, Twitter. These are going to be
these are going to be just
this is the sports entertainment of awards.
Oh, Toro Yano fan account. Shout out to Toro Yano fan account. I think that could be a legendary crossover event if we ever wanted to do the podcast with Toro Yano fan account. If we can
get the attention, I mean, shit, I'll have him on to talk about his own awards.
That would be great. So, all right, yeah. Otherwise, I'm sure you and Fish will cover the Warrior Wrestling dates. Coming back to South Indy, South Bend, heading down your land, St. Louis, Missouri area, and Grand Rapids, Michigan. So, Principal Steve, my promoter of the year.
He's giving us a lot to work with in terms of getting him on that list next year.
I'll tell you, it's an impressive list. And I think I'm at a conference for the April date in South Bend. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky. I'm not driving home with the people from work. I'm going to be flying home so we can make it to that show.
Excellent.
And that's all I have.
Well, I got nothing else. It's been a pleasure as usual. Thank
Absolutely.
you for listening. Thank you for listening to the Big Davecast, a GouldFish Pod special. Any final words for the people? All 12 of them, Dave?
We had a lot of news to cover. Always happy to come in and run a little special international news and cover some topics with you.
We'll get you back on when those Yano Awards come out.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, for Big Dave, I'm Matt Gould. Thanks for checking it out.
Peace.